Hello, deep learners. I'm Andrew Ng, founder of deeplearning.ai, and I'm excited to welcome you to our global deep learning community. I know that many of you are here today because you want to break into AI and build your career. I hope that being part of this community will help you to do so. To give you a proper welcome, I'd like to show you around the deeplearning.ai offices and meet some of the teams so that you can see where it all happens.
Oh, hi, Andrew.
Do you want to tell our friends at Pine AI what you do at deeplearning.ai?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I make articles and other media that help people learn about AI and help them understand the huge impact that AI is having in the world. Today, I'm putting together the next issue of The Batch, our weekly newsletter, and I'm looking for the biggest stories of the week to keep our readers informed.
What's been the most surprising thing you've run into working on The Batch?
How much is going on in this field? There's never a dull moment. You might think from the outside that machine learning engineers really understand everything about AI, but nobody understands everything about AI because this field is just coming to life right before my eyes as I put this thing together every week.
All right, I know you're really busy, so I'll let you get back to it.
Thanks. See you later.
Let's go meet Kian, who helped me create the deep learning specialization. He's working on an exciting new project. Hey Kian, so do you want to tell the people at Pine AI what you're working on?
Yes, sure. I'm leading a project called Workera, focusing on helping people get offers in AI and navigating their career by testing their skills, preparing for interviews and certifying them, as well as matching and referring them to good jobs in AI.
That's really cool. And what's the most exciting part of your day?
You know, the AI field is new, organizations and jobs are still misunderstood. So I'm excited to help people understand what different types of jobs exist in the field, what tasks they will work on, and what skills are needed to achieve those tasks.
Yep, and that's really important work. Well, it's nice chatting, and now let's go chat to Hotel, who is on their product team.
Hey, Andrew.
Do you want to say hi to our friends at Pine AI and let them know what you're working on?
I would love to. Hi, everyone. I lead the product team in deeplearning.ai, where we create AI education content accessible to people all around the world. People like you.
And what are you most excited about right now?
I am so excited to see our community grow and to see how eager people are to learn more about AI.
Thanks, Hotel.
Thanks, Andrew.
So, as you can see, our team is working hard to support you and help you learn. It's never been easier than before to break into AI. So if you want to build a career, you can leverage online resources available, including open source code, datasets, papers, and online courses like a deep learning specialization on Coursera. As part of this journey, I hope you get your hands dirty too. Don't be afraid of diving in to build your own project, or go ahead and try to replicate a research paper that you're excited about. One thing that I've seen help a lot of people succeed is if you can build a community or find a community of fellow deep learners you can meet with and study with on a regular basis. In fact, I hope that this Pine AI meetup that you're at right now will be a good place for you to meet these people. I hope you enjoyed the event today and that you learn a lot, both from the talks and from each other. And once again, welcome to the deeplearning.ai community.
Hi everyone, you're once again welcome to today's episode of Pine AI. It's a community event where we are exploring how AI gets to everyone. My name is Gordon France and I'm the programs lead for the Achille Foundation. What do we do at the Achille Foundation? At the Achille Foundation, we're tackling difficulties in taking education to the marginalized and disadvantaged persons, incarcerated individuals across Ghana, starting from Accra. We have different programs running, but our flagship program is called Project Phoenix, where we've been Project Phoenix, where we've been working with the Ghana prisons, and more specifically the Senior Correction Center of the Ghana Prison Service, which handles juveniles between the age of 12 and 21. We are supplementing and introducing new programs into the service, whereby the prison service is already doing a fantastic job in rehabilitating these young offenders. And what we're doing is to supplement the job and help them where we see fit, whilst introducing new programs, technology-focused programs, and educationally inclined programs as well. So our goals are quality education, decent work and economic growth, and reduce inequality. So we have a number of programs running, but the main one currently is STEM focused. And we're also introducing a reading club and so many other programs along the way. So we hope you're going to have a great time today with our guests, and I'll be your host for today. Today we have a special guest from Lawyers Without Borders, and we're so grateful to have her time having this discussion with us. So what do you do at Lawyers Without Borders? Access to justice, combating crime, rule of law. Okay? Advancing the global rule of law. Lawyers Without Borders work to build capacity and integrity in the world's justice sectors. We engage with lawyers and judges dedicated to pro bono service and integrate them into initiatives that directly or indirectly serve the underserved, protect the disadvantaged, and promote human rights. Interesting things they have going on there. It's a non-for-profit organization as well. And let's learn more about our guest today. Ms. Taylor became LOB's Executive Director in September 2020. Prior to this, she was a federal prosecutor for the U.S. Department of Justice for 20 years. Robin worked internationally as the U.S. DOJ advisor to the U.S. European Command, a military base in Stuttgart, Germany. She was part of a 15-member U.S. interagency team with FBI, Treasury, Energy, State, DHS, and others, advising the command and leadership on transnational threats, foreign influence, illicit finance, cybersecurity challenges, or cyberspace challenges, and security issues from 2016 to 2020. So that's quite a stellar career, and we are so glad to have you here today. So you can go to lawyerswithoutborders.org about us, leadership, to read more about her and the other leadership or executives on the team. So Ms. Taylor, I'm going to hand the mic over to you now. Excuse me. Thank you.
So the ability to understand how technology is shaping the legal profession in different places is really important to Lawyers Without Borders. We are a global nonprofit with the power center of the organization really dispersed around the world. It's also important for another reason. Lawyers Without Borders has had a partnership with OpenAI for about 23 months, a little under 2 years. So sort of at the time when ChatGPT was becoming more available and more used. And certainly at that point, there were even more questions about how it would be rolled out and used commercially. And at that point, I don't think there was even much of a discussion on how it would impact the legal profession. Products like Harvey, which is a web-based program that allows for legal research, and it's designed particularly for the legal profession, wasn't even in beta. I don't think then, it was just starting. And so you may ask why, what was the motivation of a small nonprofit that works, on a variety of transnational organized crime issues, human rights issues. We do a lot of trial advocacy issues, respecting independence of the judiciary. What is the role of AI in our practice? Well, the first was that as lawyers, we felt really compelled to bring the technology to a nonprofit. as I indicated to you, we are ranked and evaluated by reducing our overhead. And so we felt at a nonprofit, we would never put someone out of work based on using a chatbot nonprofit. It just seemed like a factual impossibility. Really struggling to get enough resources to do the jobs that we need to do. The second, and what we talked about with the leadership at OpenAI, is that we would start to develop policies for our organization for the ethical and safe use of AI. And that actually took about 3 months. I mean, I think it's becoming more mainstream now, and those policies are more easily put together through examples where they've been used before, but it was brand new for most organizations at that time. And so we've been able to share that with other nonprofits and other organizations, which is mainstream now, was relatively new. And I would say the third was coming up with, we spent a lot of time using the technology and coming up with ways to determine, you know, what might make it better or more applicable to what we needed our organization. And the interesting thing is, I think it's happening, if not today, this week. There's a new updated version of the AI system for ChatGPT that's being launched as part of our partnership that brings together a network approach to using ChatGPT across our organization, with the expectation that we can train it and teach it more about our organization to give it the ability to be more directed. Certainly big corporations are able to put together their own chatbots, and it doesn't always revert back to working with OpenAI. You know, there's, you know, commercial solutions out there, but as a small nonprofit, we don't have the funds or perhaps even the technical ability to create some of the tools that are available to large companies. So we've been very grateful for this opportunity. I'll pause there and see if there's anything you want to specifically ask me, Godwin, and then we can keep going.
Sure. So thank you so much for that, what you just said. Some of the things I picked up is, one of the highlights you mentioned is you don't intend putting people out of job. So I'm thinking about it like you're seeing this chatbot as a tool instead of replacing lawyers or legal practitioners. So, and you're also helping with OpenAI, work with OpenAI to refine prompts and all of that. So there was a case in South Africa recently, I think last year, where a South African lawyer went to court. I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a tech person. And he was caught referencing a case that is not in their jurisdiction, or it didn't exist or something, and the judge had to fine him. I don't know if you heard about that case. Yes, can you shed more light on that? Because it seems like ChatGPT is more generic. It's been trained with global data, but I mean, in the legal practice, you guys are very jurisdictional. So every jurisdiction and how they operate. So how do you see that playing out globally?
Sure. So, I mean, there's a couple parts to your question that I think are relevant. First, I don't think anybody has all the answers or the applications of this technology and how it will affect jobs, certainly. I imagine it will create jobs and other jobs will become more automated. So I think it's important that some of the tasks that can be really labor intensive and that are more busy work, or not tasks that are going to replace someone, but maybe make their job easier. I will point out that there is a principle in the area of efficiency that as technology expands, and even those technologies that are designed to make life more efficient often lead to more work And one example is email. I don't know how old everybody is on the line. And I will say, despite the efficiencies of email, it does seem to take up an awful lot of time and create more work. And we can talk a little bit over the course of the time we have today about, the experience lawyers are having using it, but how it's going to ultimately impact the job market, I think, remains to be seen. It is exciting though, and I think it creates a lot of opportunities. In terms of how lawyers actually use the tool, I think there's probably two components we should talk about. One is, how do they use it? Are they writing briefs with it? Are they doing legal research? And then two, what are the ethical and professional requirements to use it responsibly? And I would say that on the use cases, we're still exploring. We don't represent people in court, so our work is more policy-based or looking at legislation. But what we are starting to see, and many companies, including the company that we work with, Thomson Reuters, are starting to link AI to existing research tools, such as Westlaw. So you have the opportunity to make existing tools more user-friendly. The ability to look at case law and summarize it more analytically. And I think that case, I have seen it. I think it's only, maybe it's right up there with the one where the cat came on during COVID. I don't know if people remember the case of the lawyer who misidentified his screen as a cat, and it went viral. If you haven't seen it, you can go online. And it's one of the funnier lawyer videos, I think, in existence. But in terms of how we use it, I think there have to be not only policies at law firms that talk about how you look at citations and whether you can put certain confidential information into these systems. I think most people here who practice for any length of time are familiar with the tools that, whether cases are in fact good law or AI environment, as well as whether you're using books or digests, the good practices of making sure your case law. So I don't think we can necessarily indict the technology, the AI for that. You know what I mean? People use credit cards every day, and some people use credit cards to engage in fraud. It doesn't mean the credit card itself is entirely flawed. It's the way it's used. And I think with AI, that with use cases and guidance and direction, it can be used positively. So that kind of goes towards that second question of how people are using it.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that. So once again, you seem to talk about using the tool as for summarizing and for annotation. It's one area that ChatGPT particularly had been very bad with. So we had is it Microsoft Edge own software had to come with annotating or telling us the source. Is the later version of ChatGPT now that gives us the source. In the initial version, Gemini also tries to give the source. So I'm going to take you back a little again. So let's say in your 20 years of practice, when you were practicing with the State Department, what 2 or 3 areas would you say, aha, if I had ChatGPT back then, it would have made my life much easier? So I'm looking at your workflow. So your 20 years career, looking back, what aspect would you have said, if we had this thing earlier, I mean, it could have been a different ball game altogether?
Sure. I think about that a lot, actually. And certainly, as I don't know if anyone on this screen, probably you never had the opportunity to use a typewriter, Godwin, but there are definitely many people in the legal profession today that had to use a typewriter, which obviously doesn't have any correction or any ability. So the advancement starting to feel like, when the dinosaurs roamed and I was in university. But nevertheless, I will say, I'll give you guys an example of something that we've used the technology for recently that actually applies in the African context. So Lawyers Without Borders has a program in Dar es Salaam. It covers all of mainland Tanzania and Zanzibar. And this project, it's in partnership with the Department of State, has created a task force to address human trafficking and child labor in East Africa, focused on Tanzania. And one of the challenges in that jurisdiction is that there is not access to any case precedent, largely because there haven't been many of those cases brought in Tanzania, and the ability of the judiciary to look holistically at other similar jurisdictions or, even jurisdictions of interest has been more difficult. And Lawyers Without Borders, in partnership with Linklater, which is a global law firm, one of our partners and supporters, actually used AI as a test case to identify and summarize hundreds of cases to be able to make a compendium available. And for those on the line and who've been using AI, it doesn't seem as extraordinary now. I will say that when we started using the technology, 2.5 years ago, when I would point out it was a lot edgier, it had a lot more sort of unpredictability. It, has been more commercialized, and perhaps guardrails have seemed to have been put on it. And you mentioned the citation function, Godwin, which I find very helpful. But Linklater's was able to have its associate attorneys, those are sort of those in their first 5 or 6 years of practice, take volumes of cases and create a compendium in a couple of days. And those sorts of projects, whether I was with the government when I worked for the Department of Justice, and I worked overseas for the department for a large part of my career, could have taken months, if not, longer. Interestingly, Linklater did a program for Lawyers Without Borders in Liberia. And that project was about 12 years ago. And what lawyers in Liberia had said is they didn't have access to the legal precedent, to the cases decided by the court. And so we had a team actually pull the cases in Monrovia and around different courts in Liberia, physically go and make photocopies of the cases. And they were sent to Linklater in the UK, in London. And they had teams of lawyers review, analyze, type up, and summarize hundreds of cases to make them available to judges and lawyers in Liberia. So I probably don't have to lay out and connect all the dots on how much more efficient it would be to use the current technology. But I think it's a testament to lawyers that we really do get the job done. And I think we're defined often by our persistence. So people will go and painstakingly pull the laws that are needed. But if you can use a tool like ChatGPT, and certainly other tools are evolving, it can be a real benefit. And I think that the beneficiary in the examples I gave, here, it certainly is the government of Tanzania and the ability of those judges. And it's not up to Lawyers Without Borders to always do that analysis. We work really closely with our partners on the ground so that they can have access to the same technology and be able to manage and create the tools and information that they need to do their job.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And once again, it seems like it's very helpful in like as a summarizer, giving annotations and a lot of that. So you said, what about the cost aspect? I mean, ChatGPT is free to access, and they've given us some free rates if you want to use a 4.0 currently. after a while, it will revert you back to 3.5. I mean, I enjoy the 4.0 so much, but I'm not subscribed yet. So the cost element, right, currently is $20. And I don't know, maybe because of your partnership, you have a different plan. But as a non-profit, how has it helped you in terms of your cost elements? I know non-profit, you have to have minimal cost and reduce all of that. How has that played out so far?
You know, I'm really glad you asked that question. And I think the answer is that it has evolved and changed. I mean, the models for these technologies seem to change every quarter, every few weeks or months. I think that we have benefited by getting some of the more robust systems to use. I know. At a small number as a person is a sizable investment for our company, especially because of a lot of internal people that come and go. And I know we work in places like Kibera, which is one of the largest urban slums in Nairobi, and we're working to get free accounts for some of the lawyers and business people in areas to start to educate and get access. Obviously, there are free accounts now that has changed over time where it's been charged for. I have noticed when I use a free account now, a little more than 5 to 10 searches to do more. And it seems like an enticement to potentially buy the subscription, which I can understand. So I think I would say two things. I think the issue of how the technology is monetized will be an issue for the industry. And as things get more efficient, I read recently that the founder of Grammarly, it's a tech-based solution that reviews and looks at your grammar, and that they really hadn't initially focused on the monetization. And a lot of the technology was sent out for free for people to use. And you can still see that today. And you see over the course of using it, it will say, are you interested in upgrading? And there'll be a fee. And probably most people don't. Right. Most people don't do that. So I imagine in the area of AI, it is a balance between wanting to get the technology out there, getting people used to it, sort of looking at the nonprofit status of, at least in the genesis of OpenAI, you know, that it's a technology for the world. I don't have any specialized information on their, you know, their business model. It's just my observations of as a user, but that how these tools are monetized will be a big issue. We are finding as a nonprofit, as AI gets integrated into tools, whether it be Westlaw, you know, or other products that are in the market, generally they are often difficult for us to afford or to bring to our lawyers. So I imagine there will be some sort of gap for us. And I see everything from grant writing software to, you know, just regular uses of AI around the house or for different tasks and on a subscription basis. So the answer is I think it's still evolving.
All right. Thank you so much for that insight. And before I ask okay, we have questions coming in, but I'm just going to ask my last question. What's your forecast? How do you see, I mean, so far we've spoken about law firms and lawyers, but how about the judges? How do you see judges interacting with artificial intelligence tools, deep learning tools, machine learning tools in the future? I don't know if they're doing it. I don't know if you have any insights currently ongoing, maybe in the West or anywhere else you probably used it, maybe somewhere in Africa. You work so much in East Africa. How do you see judges interacting with these tools as well?
You know, I think there's going to be a lot of community-based discussions over the use cases. And it's interesting, I was asked that question as recently as yesterday. And, you know, one of the foundational questions that I was asked when we started using AI in a more social setting was, if someone doesn't have access to a doctor, but they can ask ChatGPT questions about their healthcare, is that an advantage? or is that a detriment? And I'm not a doctor with a cure on these issues. I'm not going to be able to, it's a discussion that we have to have. But the way I thought about it is that, we stand at Lawyers Without Borders for promoting human rights and access to healthcare, and being healthy we view as something that should be available to everybody, whether you live in a small village in Southeast Asia or, someplace in the United States. And so if ChatGPT can be a tool to support your efforts towards wellness, it would seem to be a good use case. Applying that to the area of judging, I think that, just as you said at the beginning, it's a tool. There would certainly initially be a lot of apprehension, potentially, to have technology actually making the decisions itself. I was told as a very young trial lawyer, as a federal prosecutor in Northern California, by a judge who unfortunately died a couple of years ago, Judge Milton Swartz, that he felt juries were one of the most effective ways to resolve our disputes. He had seen hundreds of jury trials and felt that when you brought the community together to decide a dispute, that he felt the thoughtfulness of the result generally gave a strong and acceptable outcome. But they're not perfect. Certainly people are convicted that are later found to be innocent. And so I think under that rubric, do we as a community believe that a technology is going to provide a valid decision-making tool in the courts? I think I bet people here listening have different opinions on it, but I certainly think the technology can aid access to justice. It can create efficiencies. We talked about efficiencies leading to more work and inefficiencies, but it can create efficiencies in the system. I think the literal nature of the technology in many instances, would make it difficult for humans to delegate that responsibility to a technology. And there's probably just sort of an existential concern about it. But, we have robotic surgery where we delegate the responsibility to a machine to perform surgeries that are potentially more accurate than the human hand. So I think it's a good question.
So I have is it a dystopian or utopian question right now. Hernandez, I'll come to your question in a minute. So do you think in the future we're going to have, since it's all about data and jurisprudence and a lot of old cases to analyze the current case? I mean, it's data science anyway. So basically, it's just database full of cases and algorithm analyzing what's happening. So you think that in future, we're just going to have a robotic judge and robotic jury, and we just present the case and have it solved within 5 minutes? Yes, guilty, not guilty. You think I see something like that happening? Do you see such a scenario panning out where we have a robotic judge and robotic juries, and we just input the case into the system and we get a verdict instantly? At least that will cut a lot of cost for the government and for the judicial system.
So Gladwin, is that a question for me? It was a little bit choppy on the line, so I think I understand the question, but you know what, I'm going to say this. Lawyers Without Borders has 35 student divisions around the world. And each year we do what's called the Rule of Law Innovation Challenge. Last year it was at the London School of Economics. And I think that is going to be an ideal question for our students to think about in decision-making. I think that as we come up with use cases, it definitely will be discussions that are community-based. as a lawyer and someone who's grown up interacting with human judgment, humans certainly aren't perfect. They have bias themselves, and I imagine some of that carries over to the technology. And so maybe the efficiencies of the system don't outweigh the ability to really evaluate the facts and the law. But I think that might be an area where people on the line here have an opinion. I know there's a question in the chat.
Yes. So what Thomas is asking is that, do we see a scenario where open source platform like Llama or Meta's Facebook chatbots can represent or can help you solve your cases? Like if I have a case with a lawyer or have a case pending, can I turn to the chatbots instead of going to see a lawyer, a solicitor to help me? Do you see that? Where do we stand right now in such a scenario?
The technology able to help? Is that the question?
So do you see, like, the way people, like when we have medical cases, we kind of Google our symptoms, and doctors are always not happy when we do that. Are we going to see the same scenario in the legal field, where if I have a case pending, maybe with the police or anybody, instead of me going to say solicitor, I rather put it into a chatbot and expect answers and deal with my case myself?
Sure. Well, I know we always get told not to Google those things that are wrong with us after going to the doctor. And I'm not sure I believe anyone here who says that they don't do it, but I try not to, because it's often kind of scary, the results that you get. But before I specifically answer that, I will weave in that the idea of access to this technology will only increase. And that I think as we see satellite technology and space technology expand, the ability for more and more lawyers and due to the cost remains to be seen. In terms of how the legal profession uses it, there'll need to be rules. And I imagine that the court procedures will become, designed to address those issues. And I imagine that there will be acceptable uses in areas that are unacceptable. Interestingly enough, at our organization, we have a lot of students. We have a lot of people, under the age of, and what I have found is our very sort of student law, because of the rules and requirements at their university. And there's been an apprehension, I've seen more, interestingly enough, in that cohort versus people say in their 40s or 50s who seem to be more open to the use of the technology. So I imagine, and reflecting on, I practiced in Northern California, which is a federal jurisdiction that covers all sorts of offenses that happen in that particular area, that our court would have a technology committee that would come together and put together the rules of engagement. Certainly, I would imagine accessing citations and getting the best law, that sort of seems to be fair game. Use different technologies to pull cases, whether it be the court website or assisted technology. As it comes into actually writing your briefs or the intellectual property that you're creating, not only is there the discussion of the responsibility to the court, but to a client? And how do you charge a client for a brief that, previously would take 10 hours to create, but now might take 10 or 15 minutes, at least to generate? Certainly, it probably has to be edited. And so I don't know that the law firms and lawyers have completely come to grips with that. And are still coming up with those use cases as well as the cost models.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I have a number of questions, but I'm going to open the floor now to our live audience from all over the world. If you have your questions, you can type it in the chat box, or you could raise up your hands and ask for the microphone and ask your questions directly to our guest today. So do we have any questions? So for those in Ghana, we have a few students who will be watching this as well. how do they come? They want to work with Lawyers Without Borders from Ghana.
Thank
How
you.
can they get in touch, or what's available for them, please?
So Lawyers Without Borders has a website, and you can jump on our website and look for the different opportunities that we have at the organization and read a little bit about some of the programs. I can give my contact information to Godwin, and we can distribute it as appropriate. We have offices in the US and the UK, and we're also registered in East Africa. So, and we have staff, as I said, around the world. But we're always looking for good lawyers to support our mission.
Great, thank you. So please, we're waiting for questions. Those of you in the live call session. Esquire Gifty, you have questions, local scenarios that you want to put forward to see how it works out? You can use the mic, you can unmute yourself and ask a question. Please don't be shy. I feel like I'm the only one talking. All right, whilst we wait.
Hello.
Okay, great.
So I don't have a question now. What I wanted to ask was asked by you about the fact that a lawyer used AI to get a case, and it happened that that case never existed. So it's been asked by you, and I'm fine.
Great, fantastic. One more question. Do you already use any AI in your law firm where you work? That's to Gifty. Or do you intend using it?
So I intend using it. However, whilst doing my internship with the courts, I was using a particular AI. That was Kwame AI.
Yes, I know Kwame AI. Yeah.
Okay. So in the near future, I may have to practice this, use this and see.
You know, I guess
Great.
one thing that brings to mind too, Godwin, is that, you know, most of the folks here who have started practicing law, you know, if they've attended law school, that one of the real advantages of a legal education is to learn to research and analyze. People always talk about what it means to think like a lawyer, right? Which I know for you might mean something different than to people here who are practicing law on a daily basis. And I definitely would encourage the profession to really think about the core skills that lawyers need, because certainly I think technology can replace or speed up a lot of the tasks that we might do as a profession, but it's that analytical problem solving. I mean, we see that every day at Lawyers Without Borders. We put together a cohort of people to focus on a particular legal challenge, whether it be reducing trauma on child, improve the ability of law enforcement to manage wildlife poaching. We have scientists coming up with DNA sequencing that can be used to combat transnational crime by looking at the location of where animals come from. It's that ingenuity that I think really allows us to make our communities better and safer and solve the problems. And certainly as you get into mediation and community discussions on dispute resolution, sometimes it's not even about resolving the dispute, right? It's about the community engagement and the healing that comes from the aftermath of resolving the problem. So the transactional nature of the AI we've talked about, wouldn't seem to completely take the role of, the lawyer in the community, the leadership role that lawyers often provide, that judges provide. So I'm optimistic that the technology will support and really enhance the profession, and that I think we all have a responsibility to think about how it applies in that responsive way.
Great, fantastic. Thanks so much for that insight. I mean, one of the ways I use ChatGPT is that, and one way I realize that most people mistakenly use it's like they kind of use like a search engine, and that's when it just cooks up, concocts a lot of stories. So usually I feed it what I want. Like maybe I'm writing something, I feed it with as much information as possible, and it helps me formatting it, like arrange it professionally, and that's a lot of that. But one common mistake is that do not use it as a search engine. If not, it will just cook up a lot of stories for you. Yeah. So in wrapping up, you said lawyers are being trained to be analytical, to think like a lawyer, and all of that. So how do you think that colleges, institutions, law schools, it's a tool? We should always say that's a tool. How do you think that it should be incorporated in training young lawyers who are coming up now? I mean, this is their world. This is our world. I mean, these are the things, the tools that will be available to everybody. So how do you think that colleges, law schools, first degree law schools, and even the law, those who are still in the university before they go to the law schools, how do you think this collaboration of human AI interaction should happen? How should teachers or faculty members or professors teach the use of this tool?
I think that's a really good question, and I think it's something that will continue to evolve. So looking at how Lawyers Without Borders operates, we get a lot of students that come to our organization. We have the student division working with developers to talk about and answer some of the questions that even Gifty raised. How do you ensure that when you identify cases or citations that they're going to be based on precedent? I think decision-making skills will remain relevant, and the ability to take and analyze and come up with conclusions or outputs. I do find myself, as I use AI, I use it a lot to edit, and I find it can be a really capable editor and proofreader, something that has reduced time for me. But I find myself reading a lot more text as opposed to actually thinking about text. But I will also say I didn't grow up doing research on the internet. Google wasn't necessarily a research tool that allowed lawyers or students to arrive at an answer. And I do find, and maybe as time even continues and people like me become less engaged in the legal profession, I do find that a lot of the folks that I work with that have grown up using the internet as a research tool often expect to get an immediate answer, and they pull up the top handful of research responses, and that I see papers or essays that simply reflect what Google has returned as the information needed for the project. Not all, but I will say I see that enough that it signals to me. And how many times have you been at a party, a dinner, and you can't remember, who starred in what movie or what song you want to, people like me just Google it. And so, the ambiguity of being unable to solve a problem is very difficult for people anymore. I know when I'm around people unable to solve the problem, Google becomes the internet becomes the immediate default, and the analysis quickly becomes people getting on their phone rather than talking and thinking about it. So, what that means in the area of AI probably is that we're generating a lot of adequate, but maybe not highly impactful text. The quality of the prose And I don't know about you, but I can almost tell now when I get a letter or, that's just been generated. There's always the word beacon. Someone must have programmed that into ChatGPT because beacons of hope. There's always a beacon of hope, right? So,
and delve.
Yes. So, I remain optimistic, but I do think, and I know you work with a lot of kids studying science. And so, writing code or understanding complex problems, it's probably on your mind too. And so I think it's good to live in interesting times. And this is definitely one of those times. I think we're going to see just an explosion. And hopefully the technology is accessible around the world and not just in places where people are lucky enough to have the means to access it.
Awesome. Hopefully technology is accessible to everybody. Thank you so much, Robin. We'll take one or two more questions. Our time is up. We have to call this a wrap. Any more questions, please? We have to wrap this now. You can unmute your microphone and ask a question. We'll give you some 5 seconds to see if anybody want to say something. Our brother from Toronto, Canada, do you want to wrap it up for us? Muhuntan.
Yeah, no, well, thanks, thanks for the opportunity, but no, I did learn, like, from a lawyer's perspective. I didn't realize that the lawyers are this close to utilizing to the point of writing briefs, cutting down 10 hours to 10 minutes. Honestly, it's scary, really, that what can happen in that industry as a whole on the commercial side, right? Like, Robin said that there's no concern in terms of people losing jobs, but if Westlaw integrates ChatGPT using, like whatever the pipeline, I think it's called RAG or something, then the 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 whole, like, the amount of research time needed is going to significantly go down, right? And that I can't see myself not being concerned about the number of jobs that are going to be gone on the commercial side. So that's kind of what came out of, like, I didn't think that we're this close to almost full automation in terms of writing briefs and things like that. But then on the commercial side of law, I think that's going to have a significant impact, just in terms of number of heads being cut.
Awesome. Thank you for picking that up. Yeah, the tools have become very good at summarization. Very, very good. That's why I said that you should feed it what you want. Once you do that, it works. It's magic from there henceforth. Or Robin, what do you say?
Say again, Godwin?
Yeah, like, I see it as a very powerful tool when it comes to summarization. Once you feed it the right data and information, it takes it out from there and fill in the gaps and correct some grammar and all those other things. Yeah, so you could cut your work hours from 10 hours to 10 minutes and you're good to go. Yeah. Albert,
I think,
yeah.
Yeah, I think the observations made, obviously there aren't immediate answers, but what does it mean when the workload on certain tasks that have typically been the main part of how a lawyer operates can be condensed into a much quicker analysis that is generally available to more people? How do you charge for that? How do you rearrange your practice where you're adding value and using that to make your work more efficient, but not reducing your practice to a level where you can't survive? And I think there's other professions, beyond law that are probably wrestling with that question as well. Certainly in the area of discovery, where you have hundreds of boxes of information and analysis that needs to be done. Whether people like doing that work or see it as busy work, it certainly was a large part of the practice when I was reviewing documents, and it would seem that that could be done a lot more quickly and will reduce the need for labor to do those tasks.
Yeah. So that's a business logic, a business decision, and business questions law firms and other businesses have to ask themselves. Great one over there. So I'm going to end this with Albert. Albert, are you here? What do you have to say? What have you learned? Question, inputs? We're taking the last word from you. Albert, can you unmute yourself and talk to us? Welcome to the community. Is Albert there? Albert Aguabe. Good. So muted.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot. I've basically just been following the presentations, and so far I do not have any questions so far to ask. But in fact, I benefited a lot from the discussion. So I'm so grateful for being part of it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Albert. So, Robin, thank you so much. Can you just give us a wrap up, your final words?
It's great to be with you. I will, it's morning here, so coffee, cake, and AI at the moment, but really appreciate the opportunity. And really, as I said, I think we all have the responsibility and the ability to think about these issues. So I appreciate the thoughtful questions, and thanks again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. We're going to have the recording sent to you for those. Unfortunately, I didn't record the early parts, and the earlier parts, I missed some part, but we have some recordings. I'm going to send it to everybody who registered and just who couldn't make it. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, and do have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.